give it a hit in second gear here and show you how the power is. Hello and welcome YouTube to another episode of Hunter Tuned. We are back in the garage today and I got another customer car in here that we're working on. This is a EG hatchback with a GSR swap and an eBay turbo kit. As you can see here, I had to, he kind of wanted me to do a tune-up on it and tidy up some things on the car. I had to install a wideband into the exhaust, so I got the sensor installed into the exhaust here. And going to be putting gauges in and wiring everything up. Also, he had complained that the car was smoking, like out of the valve cover, like what the Mustang was doing. And I immediately thought, like, oh, okay, it's a bad piston ring or something like that, because there's a lot of blow-by in the engine. But he actually had the PCV valve still hooked up to the car. Which means that when the intake manifold gets pressurized, it's actually blowing boost right into the oil pan, and that causes extreme amount of blow-by, which is extremely bad. You cannot run a PCV valve hooked up to your intake manifold once you go turbo. So that's got to be capped off. Obviously a little better than this, but that's going to be capped off so it doesn't boost into the crankcase anymore. It's also got a sticking idle problem, so when you fire the car up, sometimes it idles at $2,000 and sometimes it idles at normal 1,000. And I noticed that this throttle cable is extremely tight, so when you give it gas, the cable actually sticks the throttle blade open, and it doesn't allow it to completely shut unless you pull back on the gas pedal. Doing some other stuff on it. I got to retune the car and probably put different spark plugs in, stuff like that. So we'll catch up as we go here. God damn it, it fell off. Okay, so we were working on this thing. I got the gauges installed. So we got a boost gauge and a wideband air-fuel ratio gauge installed. The bottom hole, he's going to have to find another gauge or something for that. But yeah, started this thing up and I was going to start tuning on it. And it's smoking pretty bad. He told me it smoked and he didn't know why. So I figured maybe the PCV valve had something to do with it. But now I'm thinking it's inside the motor, like I said, with rings or whatever. So we're actually just we took the spark plugs out and we're going to do a compression test on this motor and see if it's still good. Want to go crank it over, Michael? Yeah. So we're going to try cylinder, the far left one first, and see where it's at. Alright. Yeah, that's definitely pretty weak. Oh, and it's leaking. This cylinder's got leak. It's moving down pretty slowly, but well, on the first cylinder, or number 4, whatever this one is, we got 90 pounds of compression, which is extremely weak. Yeah, that's definitely not good. Let's see what all the other ones are at. Alright, so we got about 90 on that one too, and it's definitely taking extremely long to build compression, so try number 3. Or that was number 3, now we're going to try number 2. When we pulled the spark plugs out, I also noticed that the number 1 cylinder here was smoking as we pulled the spark plug out, which pretty much indicates that this cylinder is bad. A lot of times this cylinder on Hondas go bad because when you have a turbocharger, the boost comes into the intake, and when it rushes into the intake, all that air, a lot of it gets crammed into this runner right here because that's just the nature of the boost when it comes in. It naturally wants to go to the farthest outside cylinder, which is number 1. All right, give her. All right. Now for the glory hole. Try it. All right. But I do think this engine needs a rebuild. Definitely needs some pistons. So that is unfortunate that this motor probably needs a rebuild and whatnot, but that's just the price you pay when you don't properly tune a vehicle. I pulled up the tune, that map that was on this car, and it was running like 33 degrees of ignition timing with the turbo, which is extremely bad, and the distributor was clocked all the way to one side, which means that this distributor or whatever wasn't timed properly to the engine, which actually increases on whatever the map is saying. So, like I said, this engine was kind of a catastrophic time bomb, if I could say so myself. So, I'm going to have to tell the customer that needs a rebuild. I'm probably just going to end up retuning the car anyways and get a safe map on it for him and, you know, time the distributor and everything, so that's all set. So we'll start doing that. So now we are going to set the ignition timing on the motor, and I'm going to kind of demonstrate how to do that now.
We're doing this diagnostics report because the same shit was in the Del Sol.
Oh, it's just plugged into there, you gotta unplug it?
It's a rubber thing, just gotta pull it off.
Okay, so the first thing you have to do here is you have to jump the data link connector here, which is used to check engine lights and whatnot. You have to just put a piece of wire in there to bridge the gap, and then the engine light should come on. Yep. Alright, so now that that's jumped, the timing should be locked, and we can set the timing with the timing light. Alright, so now I'm in the car and I'm trying to tune this thing up, and currently it is running around a 12:5 air-fuel ratio at idle, and I'm going to clean that up quick and get that running where it should be. So I think I'm just going to take out, like, I don't know, 15%. That might be a little too much, but we'll try it. Cleaned up to about a 15.5, so I'll add 5% back into it. There we are. Our idle is now at 14.7. So now we're going to drive it and see where the cruising is sitting at. Cruising seems pretty good already. Like I said, this car was already previously tuned. I'm just kind of going over it and you know, just double checking the tune and making sure everything is safe. Obviously it wasn't safe because the motor's hurt and this car burns oil. Yeah, I don't even know if I'm going to touch the cruising at all. It seems like it's pretty good. So the idle was a little messed up, but coming into boost there was like 11, it was like bottom 11s. It wouldn't hurt to pull a little bit of fuel out of it coming into boost like that. Usually, like I said, when before VTEC and building boost, I like to keep the air fuel around like a 12.5. That helps spool the turbo up a little bit and give you a better response. So we got a lean spot right here cruising at like 2600 RPM and kind of high vacuum. So I'm going to adjust this really quick. There we are. I cleaned it up from like a 15.8 air fuel, and it popped right at 14.7 there. So I got that spot better. And I'm just varying my throttle position back and forth, and watching the wideband and making sure everything looks okay, and making sure there's no hiccups in the tune. You want to try different gears at different RPMs. You got to get every spot where you think the car would be running at. I'm gonna do the wide open stuff right now because it's starting to sprinkle, so we'll have to come back to the cruising, but we'll see how this thing is wide open quick. Wow, really freaking lean, really lean. Not good. Not good at all. As soon as it crossed over into VTEC, it went like 14.0 air fuel ratio, which is not good at all. Like I said, the mixture of the timing on this engine, that it had way too much in it, and the fact that it's running like 14.0 air fuel is catastrophic. No wonder that the engine's hurt. So we're gonna stab a bunch of fuel in this thing. And smooth out the graph because this is extremely choppy. So I just interpolated a lot of the table, and now it should have some fuel in it. So we'll give it another hit and see how it is. I gotta hurry up because it's starting to rain, and I don't really have a whole lot of time to tune this thing. But the roads are still dry, so. You might be able to hear a difference in the video too after I do this adjustment. In the VTEC side, I mean, you could almost hear it like start coughing as it crossed over into VTEC. And it's just because the tune is super lean. A lot of times people say lean is mean, but it's definitely not. Hondas make more horsepower, and turbo cars in general make more horsepower when they're soaked with fuel. So we'll try this thing again. Still lean. I'm gonna add some fuel in down here too before VTEC, because I feel like when it's building full boost before VTEC, it's getting lean yet. Still lean. Might need a fuel pump. I have no idea what fuel pump is in this car. It might need a bigger fuel pump because it seems like it's running out of fuel, or running out of fuel pressure. But I don't know, I'll keep stabbing fuel in it and see if it cleans up at all. I'm gonna chuck like 40% in it, and if that don't clean it up, then it's definitely going to be a fuel pump issue. It seemed like it was all right for a second there. Yeah, now it's coughing rich. So I think it's got enough fuel in it now. So we'll slowly start to pull it back out. The VTEC side is extremely rich, so I just pulled 15% out of the VTEC side. I'll try it quick. Still seems like it's coughing. It's probably spark breakup. just sounds like it's fighting itself. Or the motor just sounds like it's fighting to build RPM. And a lot of times when you start building boost on these cars, you got to gap the plugs down. I usually just chuck plugs right in, it went right away, but the customer said that I already had spark plugs put in. But that's what I get for not doing it myself. So we'll head back to the garage and chuck some plugs in this thing. This is the spark plug that I just pulled out of the car, and the gap is at 42 thousandths, which is way too big. These motors definitely need a small spark plug gap to make them run right. And put in these right here. These are NGK BKR7E spark plugs, and I gap these down to like 20 thousandths and chuck them in. And this should clear up the breakup issue that the motor is having right now. It seems like when it comes into VTEC or whatever, you can hear the motor start, struggling. So we'll swap these out and get back in the car and keep tuning. All right, so we got the spark plugs in and went over the tune one more time. Adjusted the idle a little bit more because when I changed the spark plugs, it actually leaned out the idle a little bit, so I had to adjust there. And then the gear transitions were a little lean too, just cruising around, so I had to add in some fuel there. But we're gonna give it a hit here and see if this thing's better at all with the spark plugs. It should be. Oh yeah, she's breaking the tires loose now. Oh yeah. That was just a quick little pull to make sure everything was working. It wasn't coughing. I think it was still quite a bit rich, like 10.8 air fuel. So we're gonna have to get a good pull in here and see where the wideband is. I gotta make sure the rev limiter is safe as well. We have the factory rev limiter on this engine. Usually I leave the factory rev limiter. It's at 8200, so I'm gonna leave it there. As soon as we get some distance here in the road, we can give it a hit. This car's pretty quick. It's 10.0 on the wideband, so it's definitely rich, which is usually where you want to start. You want to start it off really rich and then slowly work fuel out of it instead of the other way around. We'll start by pulling 5, see where that takes us. So I just pulled 5% out. Just on the VTEC side, before VTEC seemed alright. So I'm going to pull another 5%. See how this one is. Woo, she's definitely picking up power. Still needs more pulled out though. It's like 10.4, no, 10.5. So we'll give it another 5%. And like I said, you kind of want to slowly work at this stuff and slowly take out little bit by little bit. Went through the map again and I smoothed it. Smoothed out the VTEC side a little more. And pulled another 5% out. Hopefully this thing, when I'm done, it will run like a low 11 air fuel ratio. That's where you usually want to set them. boost up higher than what it's already at, but honestly, I don't really recommend it with how the motor is. Give it a hit in second gear here and show you how the power is. She's quick. Yeah, perfect timing too. It's starting to rain now, so probably get this thing back and tell this guy he can pick his car up.